Hello. If you've joined me on my YouTube channel, hi. I've got the chat down at the bottom, so if you want to leave me any messages or ask me any questions as we're going along, feel free to stick them in there. I won't be able to type at the same time because it is literally just me and a really old laptop and a lot of willpower. So we'll see. Um, can you just someone just give me like a little wave in the chat or something if you can actually hear me properly? That would be really useful, just sound wise, I guess. Um, so, what are we on? What I'm here to talk about today is Making for the Mind, which is about. Hey, thanks, Simone. Sorry, I've just realised that you can hear me. Brilliant. Making for the Mind, which is basically a little bit about mental health and a little bit about making stuff during lockdown and how it's essentially kept me close enough to sane. So that's what I want to talk about. Also, hello, Michelle. Awesome. People are watching. I probably ought to start with a little bit about me. So, um, as as per usual, I have made a slide where my little talking bit covers up. It's in the opposite way. It covers up part of the slide, but I'm sure we'll be fine. I do education stuff. I lecture at a couple of universities here in Sheffield. I teach weird crossover stuff like interactive design and how to engage the public by combining graphic design with technology. That's one of my day jobs. The other day job is very much technology and education as well, but more from the production and creation side. In addition to that, I've done various things like writing for magazines. I guest on podcasts and I do stuff like this. And before all the changes, I used to go around and give talks and do workshops, which obviously there's a lot less travel involved now. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. But I'm also homeschooling a small child. So it's a busy time, but we'll keep going. So back in the depths of time, a bit quiet sound wise, I'm sorry. I've turned up the thing as much as I can. If I move that nearer my face, that's probably the best I can do. So crank up the volume as much as you can. Sorry. Back in the depths of time, I travelled to make affairs in New York. I travelled to San Francisco. I gave talks about silly wearables, and they were, not sensible things like health trackers or artistic motion capture. It was just daft things, and some might say pointless things. It was mostly about my nails. But in the 18th century, people used to build follies just because they could. Follies were big, ornate buildings that had no real purpose. It's better. Good. I'll just sit here holding this the whole time. I told you it was hastily put together. Where was I? Anyway, but yes. So now more than ever, we're in need of making things just because we can. So I am a world-class warrior. I'm clinically a warrior. But according to a study by the Mental Health Foundation here in the UK, about 62% of people are now worrying, like clinically worrying. So it would be interesting to see how people come out of this thinking about where they've got to. So I was suggested some titles for the talk today. Totally trash, because I'm using a lot of rubbish. Been there, done that. That doesn't work so well for Americans because it's more like trash can there, done that, and that doesn't quite work. And Seeking Life's Repurpose, which I really liked, which was from Ali, one of the junior Mythbusters. So, moving on. I've long used crafting as a way of venting my feelings. So sometimes it's good things, like in this one, there's all the positive things, all the lovely stuff. And sometimes I use it for venting the bad stuff as well. I also knit. I solder things, I cut up bits of paper and I stick them onto other bits of paper, as you can see from that one. I have bookshelves, literally shelves full of the products of my craft-based venting, and if you look behind me, you'll see all of the things from my craft-based collections. For me, it's a kind of therapy, making things. Sometimes it's also about memes as well, but mostly it's therapy. You can tell I was teaching at the time, because it's like rude children, chair waving, management. Those are the things I was cross about that day. But I dumped it all onto a piece of paper, slammed it into a book, and that was it. The book can deal with it now. So the origins of crafting as formal therapy started around when soldiers were returning from the First World War. For those with PTSD, they started doing basket weaving, and it helped to keep them distracted during long rehabilitation periods, because when your brain is occupied on a complex task like weaving, or a repetitive task like knitting, crochet, as in that picture, it can't use the same neural pathways for worrying, which is brilliant. It increases your levels of dopamine, and it reduces your stress hormone, which is cortisol, and it helps to reconnect neural pathways, so it strengthens your brain muscles that you need for dealing with worry. So the more you craft, the better your brain gets at dealing with things. It works in the same way as meditation works, in that you can make sense of your thoughts, you can order them. So this sounds great. Let's get some craft materials, and let's boost dopamine. Brilliant. So this would be the logical thing to do. However, you go online and you're like, I'm going to get some craft materials, because you can't go to the shops because they're shut. So you go and you get your craft materials, but that's out of stock. And that one's out of stock, and that one's out of stock too. And you can't even get DIY products to fix things on your house. So it's like, I'm supposed to be crafting to help my head. I'm supposed to be baking, maybe. You can't get yeast or flour here in the UK. It's like people are going all like hipster and getting sourdough starters, and it's like the new pet is a sourdough starter. I did this online quiz on a Monday, and someone introduced their sourdough. It's called Diplodocus, which is really bad, but anyway. So people are trying to do more and more and more. I mean, even like silly things like haberdashery is all sold out, but there's a reason for the haberdashery, and I'll come to that later. Here in the UK, I don't know where people are watching from. We have a program called the Repair Shop, where people are doing all these like, let's fix up old things, let's make things better. But how many of us now are repairing things rather than going to the shops and buying a new one? Because we can't get to the shops to buy a new one, or the new one isn't available. Like with Switch owners, anybody who has a Nintendo Switch, not a light Switch, a Nintendo Switch, you can't get a new one, so you have to repair them. So the demand for replacement parts for Nintendo Switches has increased as well. So basically, we want to do all this crafting. We can't do the crafting because everywhere's sold out of all the useful things and all the shops are shut. So it gets me on to thinking, what is plentiful? The actual toilet roll, not so much, but now we have the toilet roll, because everybody's got to have toilet roll. Oh, New Zealand and France, cool. I didn't realise everybody was so international. This is brilliant. So what is plentiful in my house is empty toilet rolls. So we have a couple of empty toilet rolls, and the empty toilet rolls are quite useful. So there's things you can make out of that. The other thing I've got tons of is A4 paper, because I used to be a teacher, so I've got paper everywhere, because I think on paper, everything goes on paper, paper goes in the printer. I've got paper. I also have, thank you to Amazon, I got an adapter for my screens so that I can connect them together. And the adapter, I'll show you with my hands because obviously it's plugged in. The adapter is about this big, and this is the packaging that Amazon sent. I don't know whether they'd run out of other boxes or whether they deliberately did something like that, but this was fun. Sorry, I'm just about to lose my microphone, so I'm going to put the box down and put that back in. Professional every time. So I've got tons of stuff from Amazon, and it's like, shall I stick it in the recycling or should I recycle it? And I could recycle it better. And how could I recycle it better? Well, first off, you fold it up. If you flatten it out and you fold it up, you get some really nice drawing paper. And if you have an iron and you can iron it, don't use the steam setting, it ruins it. If you have an iron, you can flatten that out, and hooray, we've got free paper. And because it's all joined together, you can fold it out and you can make ginormous paper things, which is kind of fun. So I thought one of the things that I could make with the Amazon packaging, she said, is now folded it all out. and I put it all together and I chopped it up into sensible pieces. In fact, I'll just go to this full screen so you can see it better. Chopped it up, folded it, put it in sensible pieces, and now it's essentially a really big scrapbook. So that thing that I do to like dump the contents of my brain into a scrapbook, I've now got one. And I'm going to use this one over the course of the next 24 hours to record my thoughts about this Maker Faire. I started off with a small one and then realised that there was nowhere enough space in it, because this is the other thing, A4 paper. So this one, I don't know if you can see that one. I don't have a top-down camera because I just don't have enough ports on my laptop. So there you are. This Virtually Maker Faire one, I made that yesterday, but the robot on it is part of a cereal box. So got a cereal box, drew a robot, cut it out, stuck it on, and there we are. Now we have a sort of 3D-ish robot. Same with the title there, that's just a bit of cereal box and coloured pens. So make use of what you've got. I started making loads of these little books. Again, that's Amazon packaging on the outside and just A4 paper on the inside. Make one of these books is really, really easy. You get a piece of A4 paper. If you're American and you have letter paper, I'm sure this will also work. It'll just be slightly different size. So, piece of A4 paper, and you fold it in half, and then you fold it in half again, and then you fold it in half again. And then you open it up to the first fold you did, and you just cut down the short bit. And then, like magic, becomes a book. And then you can write in it, and then you've read a book and you're an author. Yay, you've achieved something during lockdown. So those endorphins and those that dopamine is being released. So it's always a good thing. So moving on from my Amazon packaging, that box has now become a side table just here. That's very handy. I want to show you something else with toilet rolls, which I found quite fun. So you get your toilet roll, you squash your toilet roll, get scissors, and this is where I cut through the microphone. No, hopefully not. And if you cut yourself a few little strips, trying to take note of where these are ending up. Okay, 3 little strips. If you hook one inside the other one, and then sit it down, and then you push another one up inside the one that was hooked over, and then tuck them together, and you pull very carefully, you get complicatedness. You get a little join there. And that in itself, if you just lob it out the window, makes a really cool spinner. It's very windy today. Works with paper too, and you can make little spinners, and when you drop them, they're going to go like a little helicopter. And that in itself is quite therapeutic. Anyway, back to the toilet rolls. Once you've done one hook together, you can then hook loads and loads and loads together, and you can make all sorts of things. Ta-da! So there you go. I'm halfway through that. I need more toilet rolls. So as we use up toilet rolls in this house, I'm making this sort of basket, and it's just getting more and more complex as I go along. But all it is, if you look at each time, it's just those 3 hooked together, and then 3 hooked together, 3 hooked together, and so on. I will post instructions for that in the description once this becomes like a video on my YouTube channel from the live stream. I'll also put them on Twitter later. So what else can we do with all this stuff out the bin? Well, we've got the cereal boxes. We could make a cover for our book if we wanted it to be hardback. Eat your cereal. Yes, I eat sugary, disgusting cereal, but it's nice. I like it. Eat your cereal, cut out the cardboard, then you've got a cover for your book. If you put it the other way around, look at that beautiful blank cardboard for free. Amazing. What else? German Christmas stars. When I was making all these little books, I tried to make ones that were different sizes. So I used to spend a fair amount of money on these little notebooks because I used to use them for like daily lists to keep, you know, remembering what I actually had to do. And then I realised that I could make my own. And so there's one there. That's the box of my perfume. And then inside, A4 paper. And once I realized I could make my own, that was cool. But I had all like these little offcuts. They're not Golden Grahams, by the way. They're Curiously Cinnamon, which used to be Cinnamon Grahams, which are the better version of Golden Grahams. I digress. Anyway, when you're cutting the paper and you get all these little offcuts, don't throw them away. They're really useful. As with the toilet rolls hooking into each other, you can do the same with these hooking into each other. So you just hook one over that one, rotate it. Live demos, what could possibly go wrong? And then you hook that one over and rotate it. And then you hook that one over and tuck it into the first one. Complicated, but there we go. And then just pull them all tight. And then you've got a square to start off with. And with that square, you can then go on, keep folding, and you can make little stars. And that's actually really therapeutic. Once you've figured out how they work and you're sitting there folding them, you can sit there and fold thousands of these, and then you can have a head start on your Christmas decorations. So, but it's a very sort of soothing thing to do, sitting there just folding the paper over and over. So, I forgot where it was. The benefit of using all this stuff is that you're not stuck to the same materials you always used to use. So if you always used to use like fancy paper from the art shop, you're now thinking, well, what can I do with this? What can I incorporate out of the rubbish in its new textures, its new qualities that my art materials didn't have? So it's a challenge. It's forcing you to use new things and think in new ways. And that thinking in new ways, again, helps your brain. So I did ask some people on the internet what they would do with a sheet of A4. And this is one of the things that they would do with the A4. So you can do origami with it. You can draw on it. You can make bookmarks. You can make paper airplanes. You can make tiny little books. This is someone who's made one for their doll's house. You can also do paper mache. Who's forgotten about paper mache since we did it at school? It's brilliant, and it's really quite a versatile material. But anyway, asking people on the internet leads me nicely to internet friends. Another good thing about this whole lockdown thing is that a lot of people are feeling isolated, but social support, whether that's on bulletin boards or on Zoom meetups. I know not everybody is a fan of Zoom, but working with a group of on your chosen form of making can help relieve those feelings of isolation. So even if you're sat there online crafting away and talking, you're still together, even though you're not physically there. And sharing your crafts online can help others, as well as give you a sense of connection. You post a picture of something you've made, like the toilet roll basket, and people go, "Ooh, that's interesting." And then you're interacting with people. It's a good thing, that sense of connection. If you wanted to get started and you're not sure where to get started, search the hashtag and a thing that you're interested in crafting, and you'll find all sorts of people interested in that sort of thing. And you can comment on something that they've made and say, "That's nice," be nice. Don't comment on something and go, "I could do better than that," because that's not what this is about. Start yourself a Pinterest board or something like that. It's free, and you're starting to get your ideas together about what you might want to make. Even if you're not making anything, you're doing creative research. And ask questions. Find somebody who's an expert and ask people. There's a cool hashtag on Twitter called Makers Help. And if you're stuck on something and you don't know where to get started, you just ask your question and then put hashtag Makers Help, and a load of makers will jump in with their sort of solutions and suggestions. I'm aware of the time and we're getting close to it. So my problem is that I wanted to do sewing, but the sewing machines are all sold out. I don't know what it's like where you are, but sewing machines are hard to get. Luckily, I already had one, so I made myself some PPE, and this is my beautiful PPE here. It's not for my eyes. There we go. So I made myself this, and I didn't practice putting it on with a microphone, so I knew that I wasn't going to have the capability to make lots of them because I couldn't get any fabric, couldn't get any elastic. All I had was what was in the house. So what I did was I made a pattern and I shared the pattern, and that was my way of contributing. But feeling like you're doing your bit, you can make masks, you could do 3D printing, you can, make scrubs, sew scrubs, you can make visors with your laser cutter, but you shouldn't feel guilty if you can't. You shouldn't feel guilty because everybody else is doing their bit and you're not seen to be doing your bit, because everybody copes in different ways. And sometimes it's just keeping your own head above water. And by doing that, you're doing your bit by reducing the load on others. So when you're not ill, you're actually helping other people because they don't have to look after you so much. And as my mum says, you can't pour from an empty bucket. This is why I said you should be a bucket. You should make sure that yours is full. So keep your brain topped up, look after yourself, do your crafting with whatever materials you have to hand, and keep your bucket full so you can pour things out for others and you can help others that way. Going back to sort of, what I said originally, yes, mums do rule. Going back to what I said originally, hi mum. This is whatever craft you do, it prevents your mind wandering. While it is occupied crafting, you can't think so much about the things that worry you. And that's not that you're just going, la, 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 they're not there. You're going, let's give my brain a little rest. Let's have some time to recoup my thoughts, to have a bit of a relax, to have a sensible, just like downtime. And crafting is probably one of the most healthy downtimes that you can do. Some people like running, but it gives me shin splints. I don't like running. Running doesn't like me. I like crafting. So that's a quote I found. I can't attribute the quote because I'd found it in a newspaper or something, torn it up and stuck it in one of my books, but I had not torn out who did it. So if anybody knows, that's great. I tried Googling it, didn't work. Anyway, whatever you do to keep yourself ticking over, you should keep doing it. You don't have to come out of lockdown with a new skill. You don't have to come out of this with a podcast or having learnt how to code in 50,000 different languages. You don't have to have produced 50,000 useful things. I don't know why I keep saying 50,000. Maybe it's just the first number that comes into my head. But you don't need special equipment to keep your head above water. You make with what you've got, whether it's stuff out you're recycling or stuff that you bought and meant to get round to at some point, and you stay as sane as you can. So you've got this. Do my motivational thing. You got this. This was a wonderful cross stitch that my friend Claire sent me, because everybody is crafting that I know and keeping themselves sane, and we post each other sometimes the contents of our crafts. So maybe you should go away, make yourself one of these little booklets and fill it full of nice things. Maybe find a flower in the garden or on your walk and press it into there. Find a picture out of a magazine of something that makes you happy. Put all the happy things in there and send it to somebody so that they get a little bit of the happy. I wondered if anybody had any questions. There's a slight time delay between the chat and what you're seeing on the screen. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask them. I've got about 5 minutes left before I need to get off and stick to my allotted slot. So I didn't know if anybody just wanted to say hi or tell me about things. I'm just looking at 3D printing with friends. 3D printing with friends is great. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now. Our Hackspace is locked down, so we're not allowed to go in there because in the UK there's a thing where you can only meet one person and you can only meet them outside. And so that's a bit rubbish, really, when you're used to hanging out with a whole crowd of lovely people and making things together in a sort of shared knowledge, shared equipment, shared space way. We're not allowed to share that space at the moment. I'm hoping that the lockdown will lift a bit towards maybe the end of July and I can get back to the Hackspace, hang out with people. So that'd be nice. I'm just going to keep rambling on to myself unless anybody has any questions. Someone said I'm doing scrapbooking. I like that. Yeah, I am. Scrapbooking. And also my room is apparently perfectly set up for nice audio. That's because there's so much rubbish in here. I have so much in here. This room is, what you can see on the screen is pretty much the entire room. You can't fit a single bed in it in one direction, only in the other direction. And if you have a single bed in here, you have to open the door and throw yourself onto the bed because that's all there's space for. So it's like either a nap room or a room full of all my crafting stuff. which is essentially what this is it a hobby, and do I make a living out of this? The scrapbooking is a hobby. Making things is a kind of a hobby, but my day job is to go out and teach people new things. So in essence, I do make a living. However, my living is much more geared towards electronics and education programming, but through creative mediums. So I'll get paid to go to an art gallery and teach artists how to use new materials to make their work interactive. I get paid to teach at a university to teach graphics students the same kind of thing. So there's that crossover between art and technology, and that's where I sit. That's my day job. So apparently you can use toilet rolls like clay. I'm guessing that's some kind of paper mache thing. So when you stick them in water, you probably get some kind of pulp. That would be really fun. Any social links? I have a Twitter at Tannerai. That is my Twitter handle. And you can use that. I'll try and put that in the, what do you call it? The description when I post the video up. There's obviously my YouTube channel as well, which I have neglected because I've been really, really busy. But I should not neglect it now because I conveniently have a lot more time. So I'll do that. I also post links into the how to hook up the toilet rolls to make the baskety things. It's supposed to be an icosahedron, if anybody is interested. It's the structure of a buckyball, which is a really strong form of carbon. So it's maths as well, getting your maths in. I will post a link to how to make a little book. They're often known as zines, like short for magazine. I'll post a link to some ideas for that as well. And also there's a chap called Darren Wakelam who does some really cool sculptures with toilet rolls and all sorts of paper and recycling stuff as well. So I really like what he's doing. So I'll post links to that as well. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll get notifications when there's anything up there. So that's cool. And yeah, do I publish tutorials online? I do. There is a site I'm not allowed to mention at the moment because we have UK furlough rules, which means that I'm not allowed to do anything that promotes my day job. But you'll figure it out if you go far enough back in my timeline. And also, I do publish stuff online when I do it for other people. So again, I link to those on my Twitter. So my Twitter feed is probably the best thing to follow if you want updates about various things that I've done. Sometimes I just do little videos on there to explain things. So, right, we've got about 1 more minute. Any last questions? Yeah, there's some links in the chat there if you're looking at the chat. That's very useful. If you search for Tanya Fish, you will probably find nearly all of my tutorials. I'm quite Googleable. I am not a country musician, nor am I a Bollywood film actor, but all the others probably me. So you've got my Twitter handle. I'm going to close down the stream very shortly. Thank you for all your really kind comments. It's been really helpful. If you could leave a like on the video as well, that would help out with whatever weird algorithms happen on things. So thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. And I hope that it's been audible and sensible and interesting in some way. And get making stuff because it will increase your dopamine levels and it's good for you. Be a bucket.